All right, in today's video, I was thinking about the conscious and the unconscious mind. I was watching a video by Dr. Joe Dispenza, and it kind of made me remember some of the things about the conscious and the unconscious mind. Because a lot of the times, our unconscious mind has been conditioned by a lot of the, experiences we've had growing up as kids, maybe a pattern of development we learned when we were young, and it just got drilled into our heads where it just became automatic. Like a good example of that is driving a car. I'm sure for all of you that have had that experience where you're driving down the road and then all of a sudden you're deep in thought, and then all of a sudden you're like, holy cow, how was I even driving the car? Because you're so deep in thought that you don't even remember for a few minutes or a few seconds, even a minute, I don't even know, where you were like, wow, I wasn't aware of driving the car. And that's because your unconscious mind is so used to driving the car that when you went on autopilot in your conscious mind, you were deep in thought, the unconscious mind was driving the car. And like Wayne Dyer always used to say too, is he was in the military and he had to learn how to do Morse code. And uh, so to this day, he still knows it. Well, not to this day, until the day he died, obviously. But anyway, so those are things that aren't really that bad or can be helpful, but there's also a lot of stuff that maybe through conditioning when we were younger, if we had negative thoughts beat into our heads or bad experiences, or we didn't think we were good enough, and all that stuff and ideas, and maybe you just had a rough environment that you grew up in, that you were always told that you're not smart enough, you're not pretty enough, uh, you'll never do this, you'll never do that. So just a lot of negative stuff. So, and then you unconsciously, you believe that, and you still believe that to this day. So that's why I think meditation is a good way to bridge that gap between the conscious and the unconscious mind, because the unconscious mind sometimes drives your decisions, drives your behavior, drives your belief system. And I feel like the more you meditate, you kind of, you know, go back into the unconscious mind and stir some stuff up. When then all of a sudden you'll remember an experience that you had as a kid where, like for example, I had one when I was younger, and I remember being in line at the when I was really young. I remember being in line, and I was talking to my friend, and for lunch one day at school, and the substitute teacher just snapped on me. She was like, "Why are you being so loud?" and just jumped on me. And I was in my head, I was like, "Why are you?" I didn't say it, but in my head, I was like, "Why are you singling me out?" And it really upset me that she yelled at me because I was doing what every other kids were doing. We were kids. And I had forgotten all about that stuff until, one day in meditation, and all of a sudden I remembered that experience. And I was like, wow, I wonder if that's why sometimes I keep my mouth shut and I don't always speak my piece. And, so that's just a little example, but it was weird how I had to go back to that. So I feel like by focusing on it's almost like I believe the conscious mind operates more on a beta wave, like the faster one that I talked to before, and where the unconscious mind is more on the alpha wave. So when we got to change our frequency, when we change our brain, then we kind of change the experience we're having. So I also thought about that too, is like, you got to change the frequency of your life, change the frequency of your mind to be able to make a change. So let's see. So, yeah, meditation helps you become conscious of your unconscious thoughts. It brings awareness to them. Sometimes we don't even realize what we're doing from the unconscious mind because we have been conditioned to become and act in a certain way, and becoming aware of that is the first step to making a change, because we can't make a change if we aren't aware of the behavior that we're doing. So I feel like meditation, to become familiar with, helps us do that stuff, helps us become more aware of the things that we're doing and things maybe we need to grow and change. So that's the first step to change. Then when you start to notice we are having these limiting thoughts or beliefs, we can stop ourselves consciously. So then when we do start to think we're not enough, or I can't do this, I can't do that, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not smart enough, then in those moments you'd be like, wait a second, stop, no more having those thoughts. So you kind of stop that train of thought. Now again, that doesn't mean you're never going to have those thoughts again, but it means that the next time you have them, when you become more aware of that you're having them, then you can stop in the tracks. And the more you practice that and the more you become aware of that, the I would say you can kind of recondition your mind for the better. And then the act of mental rehearsal builds circuits into the brain. So yeah, so before when we were, we built that into our unconscious mind with all those negative circuits when we were younger. And now we need to reconscious or recondition our unconscious mind through our consciousness now, and then retrain our brains to be better, because when we were younger we didn't know any better. So I believe that all change starts with trying to recondition yourself, and I think meditation is a good way to start that journey of looking deep inside yourself and kind of finding these areas that we need to bring more awareness to. And the more awareness we bring to these situations, the more apt we are to change. And the more we do that, then we can actually condition our minds to be better in the future. But don't get discouraged, because when I was younger, I used to get discouraged. I'd be like, Wayne Dyer would say, change your thoughts, change your life. And I would try to change them for like a day or two. And then I'd be like, oh, it didn't work. And then I quit. And then I remember Mike Dooley, years later, he's like, he would always talk about thoughts become things. So kind of a different way of saying the same thing. But then he said, we expect to change patterns that we developed, that spent years to develop. And I was like, wow, you know what? I never thought of it like that. And he said, it's not going to go away overnight. It takes time to train your brain and to develop a new pattern. So I was like, whoa, it was like the missing puzzle piece that I'd been looking for that made everything Wayne Dyer was saying make sense. So again, that's why I always try to keep learning and keep expanding and keep doing it in repetition, because eventually you don't know who's going to say what. And then that one day they might say something that might just be like, whoa, now I get it. So that's why I always say keep doing it, keep the repetition, keep learning, keep moving forward, keep trying. So never give up. It doesn't matter how long. The only thing that matters is if you keep working at it, keep trying, you will get there. So I think meditation is a good starting point to slow down the mind and bridge that gap between the conscious and unconscious, so you can become aware of these things that you need to make changes on.